How's it going, everybody? It's Coach Kevin here. It is June 11th. I'm here with Logan.
How you doing,
This
guys?
is episode 3 of Puck Drop. We're going to talk a little bit about Stanley Cup playoffs. We're going to talk about winning mentalities and being able to stay locked in when you need to be locked in, and what that kind of takes in all sports in general, not just hockey, just that athlete mentality of how to win. First and foremost, Stanley Cup Finals been going on. Game 4 the other night, Game 5 tonight. It has been an awesome series.
Absolutely. I mean, probably one of the best. We've been very blessed these last 3 years to have, some very competitive and, high quality hockey coming down to the line in the Cup Finals. And I think this series goes a little under the radar, broke the mold of the back-to-back years of Florida and Edmonton, seeing the NHL's number one guys, McDavid and Draisaitl, fight for it. I think, two smaller market teams, people kind of wrote this one off before it started, but these two teams have been giving us some of the highest quality hockey that we've seen all season.
Yeah, it's been sick. I mean, I feel like every game has large multi-goal comebacks. Every game, it just never feels over. It just, every single one of these games, no matter what the games happened in the past, some sort of big lead, and you sit there like, this team is dead. And then all of a sudden it's a tie game.
Yeah.
And it's just been unreal. I mean, Jordan Staal turning the clock back. For a while, I even forgot Jordan Staal was even in the league. And for him to be scoring big goal after big goal for this team, just doing what it takes to know how to win. He's won cups with Pittsburgh in the past, and now he's looking to win a cup with this hometown organization. And that's now kind of taking him in with he had his brother there. Mm-hmm. His brother won a cup back in 2006 when they first won the cup. And, it's just, he just turned back the clock. And I think one big thing for Carolina, if you look at it, it's the guys who are producing aren't the people that you expect to really be producing. Like, Aho and Svechnikov has kind of been pretty quiet in the series. They really haven't really been lighting it up. But it's a whole lot of other players. This team is just really, really, really deep, really, really strong. They're fast, they forecheck hard, and they just never give you a second to breathe. And, it feels like Carter Hart's the inexperience is starting to show a little bit. He's starting to crack a little bit. I just think Carolina's been a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that's kind of what set Carolina apart, these last 5-10 years, as long as you can remember, while this is the first year they're really getting over the hump, making it to this, the Stanley Cup Finals, when we've seen them fall short in the divisional and conference finals for so many years, the biggest thing you could always say about them was that they were deep. And that's what this team has been built on. You look at this roster and they've never been afraid to trade guys to, level the team up. But if you look at it, it's the same core of depth pieces that have been there for the last 5, 6, 7 years, I mean, you got guys like Aho and Svechnikov, the homegrown guys they've drafted, but then you bring in guys like a Taylor Hall, a Freddie Anderson for a lot of this playoff series, especially in the regular season. Obviously, he didn't get the start in the last game, but either way, they have these guys come in that just build around a core of a deep, deep playoff team. And it's honestly awesome to see them finally get over the hump, get into the Cup Final. And it just happens to suck that they're facing Vegas, who's an absolute wagon of a team. They bring in Marner, which, obviously great to see him, at least for me as an Atlantic Division fan, leave the Leafs and then absolutely tear it up. That's probably, for all Leafs fans out there, probably the worst thing that you could be seeing right now. But it's almost a tale of two different teams when you got Vegas, who's, they've been there, they've done that, even though it's a new expansion team. This is their second Stanley Cup Final appearance since they've been in the league. There's no doubt that there's a great organization being ran in Vegas. And it shows when you take the risk to bring in a guy like Marner, who hasn't had playoff success, who's been stuck in Toronto, obviously an absolute stud of a player, and you bring him in and, you aren't afraid to put him on the second line during the regular season, see his numbers drop, because when it comes playoff times, that producers like him are going to step up. And that's what we're seeing right now, natural hat trick, 3 goals straight away, all through himself. That's the type of thing that he brings to this team. And I think that both of these teams are, in a different way, examples to the rest of the league of what you should be doing. While they do rely on their homegrown guys, they go out and they trade prospects, they trade draft picks. They're not willing to, sacrifice 6 years down the line because it's win now right now. And they're willing to retool. Neither of them, obviously Vegas newer, but these aren't teams that were hitting 10, 12-year rebuilds like you see some of these other teams go through. Like they took the homegrown guys that they had, but they also weren't afraid to ship off a good majority of draft picks and actual, like the picks themselves and the players they took in order to set themselves up to win now. And I think when you look around the league, for the longest time, the status quo has been to tank and to get first overall picks and to get high draft picks and build a team around that. But Vegas especially shows you that you don't need high draft picks to be a successful team. Yeah. They picked, what was it, 6th in their first entry season, and I don't think they've been in the top 10, 15 ever since. And it shows that the way to build a team now is to get guys who can play now.
I think there's only 2 players left on the team that were on the expansion draft. I think it was just
Carlson
and McNabb.
Theodore, right? Was Theodore an expansion guy?
Maybe Shea Theodore.
No. But the thing is they're willing to trade their guys.
It might have been Brady McNabb. It's a defenseman.
Yeah.
I think it was McNabb. It was Carlson for sure.
Yeah, Carlson definitely.
I think if Brady McNabb is the other one who, the only 2 players left on the expansion draft. You know, kind of going back to what you're saying about Freddie Anderson, it's for over the past couple of years, the knock on this team was always, is their goaltending good enough to get them over the hump? And their goaltending was always an issue for them, right? I mean, the years that they would lose to the Rangers, the years they would lose to Tampa, or they would go so far, and they would lose Washington in the playoffs. All these years that they would lose, the knock was they didn't have the goaltending, right? Freddie Anderson can't get them over the hump and whatnot. And he's had a great playoff so far. Yeah, he got pulled, but the reality is, he's still got them there, still playing really well. And then when he wasn't playing well, they went to Bussy, the young guy who he played well during the season.
Yeah.
And, he gave them all the confidence in the world that should they have to turn to him, they can.
Yeah.
And that he's not going to be a liability. He can step right in and lead them to victory. And I set aside a really wonky goal in game 3, that overtime goal that bounced off the end boards and just hit his foot and went in. It's, he played really well in the game in game 4, and he kept them right there, and he gave them a chance to win. That's all you can ask for your goalie, is to just give you a chance to win, especially when you got 2 teams that can put the puck in the net.
Yeah,
it is a bit interesting because you see that in Carolina, the whole playoffs early, they weren't giving up a lot of goals, and now it's turned into a high scoring series, and I think is a part of a product of who you play too.
Yeah,
right. I mean, they played Ottawa in the first round, right? And Ottawa wasn't, they're good. They're not a great team.
Not great, yeah.
And then you have Philly in the second round that nobody even expected them to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, let alone win a series.
Exactly, so. And then you got Montreal in the third round that no one really expected. Another team that you didn't expect them to be this good this early. Another team is going to be good for a long time. So you can argue the path may not have been the easiest, but they got the job done and they did it in kind of a dominant fashion. And now they're here against a really good team in Las Vegas.
Who did have a hard path.
Who had a hard path. And if you're showing that the strength schedule really didn't really matter with Carolina, they probably would have beat any good team going forward. Because they're handling Vegas.
It's not like it's the games, the scores show enough. Obviously, no team dominates, but even like watching the play, like it's such a back and forth series. Right when you think one team has all the momentum, it flips the switch immediately. Exactly, it really is.
It's been such a good series so far. You just have no idea what to expect. And every time you think one team's got momentum, it just flips the other way. It flips and goes the other way.
And I think it's making for such a great series that sadly some NHL fans might have already tuned out of. Because, I know going into it, when I, at least as a fan, saw this, I was excited because I knew the prospect of what it could bring, knowing how deep these teams are, knowing how close Carolina has been. But talking to a lot of my friends who do watch hockey, it didn't necessarily excite people the way that the Stanley Cup final has in the past couple of years. And I think that the people who aren't tapping into it are very much missing out.
You're missing out on a great series.
You're missing out on maybe one of the best Stanley Cup finals we've seen in the last 10 years.
Unfortunately, going into this series, the biggest problem from an outside, from the casual fan, is this isn't the flashy series. It doesn't have the storylines. It doesn't have the markets, right? Two, quote unquote, smaller market teams in the grand scheme of things. And, he didn't have the storylines that it had in the past, the McDavid storyline, the back-to-back repeat for Florida storyline, right? So it didn't have those kind of really pull-in draws that some of these other series might have had in the past. But it really has turned into a great series. The hardcore hockey fans, they're going to watch no matter what, and they're just absolutely loving it. And you just, as a hardcore hockey fan, you hope that the casual hockey fan is also tuning in and watching and
realizing
really
how good it can be, even if it isn't a McDavid or a Draisaitl or or a McKinnon or someone like that.
Yeah, to really appreciate the greatness of this hockey series. I mean, when you see a 3-0 game, like that one game where Carolina scored 4 goals in the third period, that was just unreal.
Yeah.
And even last game, it was a big lead that went away, that went away, and back and forth, and no lead is safe in this series. And that's really exciting hockey. High scoring, fast paced, flying back and forth hockey is just that you just don't know. It's so unpredictable. It's just the best. It's so exciting. It's so much fun to watch. We got it's turned into a 3-game series, and 2 in Carolina, 1 in Vegas. What do you got?
I want to say going into this, my logic was I felt that Carolina deserved it. They've been around, they've been here for so long, they've been a good team for so long. They came out of the Metro as, the Metro was a lacking division this year compared to the Atlantic, just overall teams, and Carolina dominated. They did exactly what they had to do. They came into the playoffs and did the same thing. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Vegas. I think that I wouldn't necessarily want to see them win another one. It's too soon. I don't really like the way that the organization handles some of their situations with their players. But as a Red Wings fan, there might not be anything that could make me happier than seeing Mitch Marner win the Conn Smythe and a Stanley Cup in his first year out of Toronto. So that all being said, I'm honest, as long as Marner, continues the way he's playing, I would love to see Carolina win, but a Conn Smythe for Marner and a Vegas win would not make me sad either.
I originally said Vegas in 6, and I'm going to stick with that. It's just happy. This series has proven that home ice means nothing. It means nothing. Teams win on the road. It's like this series, both these teams are so locked in that they're not. The bright lights, the home crowds, they've shown that they can go on the road and win, both of these teams. So, the home ice to me means nothing. I said Vegas in 6. I'm going to stick with Vegas in 6. The underrated guy that nobody talks about, I think typically the names get the awards. I think if Vegas wins, Marner does win Conn Smythe. Mm-hmm. But a guy who deserves a ton of love is Brett Howden. He's got 13 goals. Mm-hmm. And I think he had 12 goals all year in the regular season. This is a guy
20 points on the season
who just absolutely flourishes in the playoffs. He's an awesome third line guy. He wins faceoffs, kills penalties. He does all the right things, scores big goals. When he was on the Rangers, he kind of didn't. He was young. He didn't really develop into what he is now yet. And he came to Vegas and he absolutely flourished.
And that contract looks great for them now. 5 years at $2.5 million.
He has just been better. He has been the ultimate X factor, the ultimate kind of guy who doesn't get the attention, doesn't get the love that he deserves just because he's not the flashy name. He's not the first line guy. He's not the guy who's going to score you 80 points. Mm-hmm. But man, in come playoffs, he is just money.
And that's what these teams are built on, both of them. They're filled with guys just like that who, regular season, maybe they're getting 30, 40, at most, half a point per game. But when you fill your team with guys who just have that grit, they have that X factor, that ability to, when it comes down to a high stakes situation, that they're going to be able to, put their head down and put the puck in the net, like a Howden, like a Hall, a Stahl. I mean, obviously Hall had his time as an MVP, but the clock doesn't turn back for anyone. But it seems to for him in these playoffs. Like, you have to have those guys that, when it comes down to playoff season, regular season aside, all that aside, they're able to, get gritty and play that experienced hockey. And I mean, look at Vegas as a team; they represent that. In the regular season, they were worse than a majority of the teams out of the East.
Absolutely.
But when it comes down to the playoffs, there are teams that win, there's teams that don't. And Vegas has proven almost since their expansion year that they're going to be a team that wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we talk about intangibles. We've talked about this a lot in some of our past episodes and some of the past videos that we made of intangibles, coachability, doing what needs to do to win, and having the right mindset and whatnot. That's so important in all sports and pro sports and youth sports, and to win at the top level. Right. And I just kind of want to pivot into talking about that a little bit and the importance of leadership and the importance of having guys like Stahl on the roster, like Hall or like Mark Stone or Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore, these older...
Even Carlson at this point.
William Carlson at this point, yes, absolutely. These older veteran presence who understands the importance of staying laser focused on that goal and not wavering and not letting yourself get ahead of the moment and making sure that the whole team stays focused in on that goal.
Yeah.
Right. And that is where a good leader comes in. And to win, seasons are so long. A hockey season is so long, and it's you really need those older veteran guys to make sure that the whole team stays locked in and stays focused on their main goal. And you got guys like Stahl, you got guys like Hall, and you got guys like Stone and McNabb and Carlson to just make sure that the younger guys don't waver from that all-time goal, right? And they don't lose sight of what they're trying to obtain, all right? At the end of the day, it's the Stanley Cup, and that's the main goal. They don't get ahead of themselves. They don't look at, okay, we won a game, great. We're up in the series 1-0 or 2-1 or 2-0. It doesn't matter. Because the reality is that means nothing unless you actually finish.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, this series is a great example of that. If you look at how these games have gone, teams come back and forth. I mean, pretty much every game has been a comeback of some kind. And I think that that's where that leadership comes in the sense that, like, you don't beat yourself up if you're down 1-0 in the series, but you also can't beat yourself up if you're down 1-0 in a game.
Yes.
2-0 in a game. And, even 4-0 in what? Go third period, you're down 4-0. A team that lacks that leadership and that experience, that's where it becomes easy for things to unravel and things to fall apart.
Yeah.
And, even look at a team like Montreal. While they held their own and, as a young team, they made it farther than anyone thought. When push came to shove, that's where that experience plays a crucial role.
Yeah.
Where you're in a Eastern Conference Final Series and most of the guys on your team don't have that playoff experience. It's going to hold you back. And I have, a lot of hope, or I wouldn't say hope, but I have a lot of expectations for that team moving forward, especially after this. But
they're going to be good.
They're going to be
very good for a long time. And this experience of losing is going to help sometimes.
And that's where all that experience comes in, where these guys like Hall, Stone, like you say, like they've been in long playoff series. They've been on, Stone obviously won a cup with Vegas. He's been there and done that. You got guys like Stahl, been there, done that with Pittsburgh and, throughout his whole career. And like these little experiences are what build leaders. And I think that you'll see that for guys like Caulfield and, guys like Slavkovsky, but in the long run, it only can come with time and experience.
You got to know how to lose before you can understand how to win, right? And losing and these experiences for these younger teams, like you said, like we were mentioning Montreal, right? So losing that series is really going to help them in the long run because they're going to understand we know what we did, right? We understand. We're going to look back at the tape. We're going to take that experience, that feeling, that anxiety that was happening throughout the season, or throughout the series, that anxiety you get, that pressure you feel on yourself, right? And as you get older, you understand the mentality that you have to take, and it's not done by alone, right? That's where you have to have a good support system, and sometimes your support system is something external. Sometimes your support system is something inside the locker room. Mm-hmm. But you have to make sure that all these good teams, they always have that support system. They always have someone to lean on, right? Right in New Jersey right now, the Knicks, that's the big thing. In the New York metro area, that is so huge right now. And it's, different sport, but same kind of, we're talking about that mentality of being ultra focused on the long-term goal and ultra just locked in on making sure you don't forget what we're playing for, and that it's a long series. It's a best of 7 series. You got to win 4. Winning 1 or 2 games isn't good enough. That doesn't win you the championship. So when you look at the way that some of these guys take their post-game interviews, it is these veterans, the Jalen Brunson, the Karl Anthony Towns, OG, Josh Hart, the way these guys talk about their mental and the way they are focused in on the series. A game like last night where you just had an absolute improbable comeback down 30 points to win, and OG Anunoby, one of the biggest shots of his entire life, was just stone cold stoic in his post game because he knows it's not done yet.
Yeah.
All right. It's not over. We have to win. Jalen Brunson, same thing. They just talk about how They show no emotion whatsoever because they understand they haven't won anything yet. They still have to stay focused on achieving their goal. And the same thing happens in any sport, right? Whether it's professional, basketball, hockey, or even as a youth. If you're a high school player, you're trying to win a state championship. If you can go ahead and you win one game, you win the first round, win the second round, it means nothing until you actually win. If you're a team that has legitimate title aspirations, a team that you believe can legitimately win a state championship, you can't get ahead of yourself. You can't win one game and sit there and say, all right, that was awesome. Like, we're going to win this now.
And that's an easy thing to do, especially when you haven't, had those experiences of victory into loss. It definitely is a challenge that it's harder to face without that experience, but it's something and it's something you can study. You can look at any sport, any athlete, and different, like you look at guys like Brady who were all and Kobe, the Mamba mentality, like having that stone cold, the way that they go about it. That's one way to handle, setting expectations and carrying through with them. But there's so many different. You can go about it in an emotional way, and the highs and lows. But as long as you find something that works for you, where you're keeping your head on straight, knowing that one game does not, depict a series, depict a whole season, that's where you go. Because it's easy to, start a season hot. As you said, like even in the high school level, start a high school season hot 4 or 5 games in. It's easy to let your mind slip to the, this could be the year. But the farther you look down the line, the more you affect yourself in the short term. And the more you're looking ahead 2, 3, 4 games down, the more that you're going to end up seeing poor results. And I mean, I think personally, the Knicks have probably the biggest game of their entire existence is this next game, not just because they can close out the series, but because it's how do you respond after having such a big emotional comeback. 100%. We see this with teams all the time where, even like people are saying about the Spurs that the OKC was the NBA Finals and there was so much emotion and, just effort that went into that victory. And it was such a monkey off their back defeating this team that, everyone's been putting them up against all year, that now we're seeing a different, we're seeing them struggle in these big moments against a team like the Knicks because it's easy to overexert yourself early. It's easy to, be so driven on one thing that you're not even thinking about the greater goal that you have.
Yeah. And a situation like that, you see the experience versus the youth really coming out in that series, the experience of the Knicks when you have people who have won championships. The Nova Knicks, right? They get multiple national championships for Bridges and Brunson, right? And
you got Bridges who went up 2-0 in a series and ended up losing 4 straight. One.
And that all comes to the mentality. I understand. I've been here before. I know what it takes. I know this is not over. As exciting as it is, it's not over. We still have to main focus on the goal. And that's why you see teams with those older veterans, or go back to high school teams, the teams that are senior heavy, right? Or in the collegiate level, teams that have older players. You typically see those teams win more often than teams that have a younger base, and younger core. Talk about Montreal. There were games where they didn't even have a shot in the third period against Carolina.
And that wasn't an attribute to the skill difference. That was an attribute to
they know how to lock it.
Carolina has been there. They have done this. Montreal simply hasn't. And you know what? That's going to absolutely set them up in the long run. Having experience like this, honestly, in a season that I'm sure Montreal fans will say themselves, they have been happy to even make the playoffs.
100%.
So having this experience is, obviously, and it goes for the Spurs too, even if this doesn't end up working out for them, having this experience early on in the career definitely, sets a precedent for the program, and it sets a precedent for these young guys that they know where they want to be. They know exactly where they want to end up at the end of every season. And that is what it's good for. But at the other side of it, you can't fake experience. You either have it or you don't. And as much as you would love to, see these young teams, flourish and, have these great wins, it's hard because you can't make up for experience that you don't have. You simply have to live it.
100%. And you have to, if you're a young player or a high school hockey player or any sport for that matter that would watch that would listen to this or watch this video, and you are on a team that has a legitimate chance to win at a high level, whether it's at the club level to go to nationals or districts and win at that level, or a high school team that maybe is a bit senior heavy or you got a lot of talent and you have a legitimate chance to win. The easiest way to have a disappointed season is to lose sight of your goal and to to unravel mentally, right? Where you have the skill and you're not living up to skill, it's a mental game. And you have to just make sure that the leaders in your locker room and the leaders on your team keep everything else together, right? And the best teams are the teams whose best players have accountability, want to win, and care about the rest of your team, right? Your best players have to treat your worst player the same as they do as the second best player on the team, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to remember, it's the old adage, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? Because for a team, whether it's in the NHL or a team at the high school level, if your fourth line or third line or whoever the lowest on your depth chart that's actually stepping foot on the ice, you have to have the mentality, if I step foot on this ice, no matter what, I will have an impact on that game. Whether that's a positive or a negative impact on that game, that's up to you and that's up to your teammates around you. But you have to say, no matter what, if I get one shift or if I get 15 shifts, I made a difference in that game. And what kind of difference are you going to make in that game will depend on you and your mentality. Are you going to go out there? If your job is out there, your job might just be to go out there for 30 seconds to give your top line rest. Yeah. That might be your job. Don't get scored on, get the puck deep, give your top guys rest and just play shutdown defense. And if your mentality is, that's not my game, I'm a goal scorer, I go out there and you make a turnover and you give up a goal, well, congratulations. You hurt your team. Yeah. You have to play the role that your team needs you to play.
And what I think is also so crucial too is if you are a third, fourth line guy and you're going out there, you should feel the confidence of every player on your team that you deserve to be out there. And
absolutely.
I think it starts with like your first line leaders, your best players. As you said, your best player should treat the fourth line guy the same way he treats his second best player on the team. And I think you put it a great way with that, because if you're going out there as maybe a freshman, you just made varsity and you're playing in a crucial game, maybe on the third or fourth line, and you don't believe that your senior captain has your back, then how are you going to go out there and play well? You're going to be second guessing everything that you do and doubting all your instincts. If you go out there and you believe and you feel like you have the trust and backing of not just maybe your best player, but of every player on the team, you're 100% going to be able to, go out there and produce to a much higher level. And I think that's where leaders have to understand that it can be challenging to see it like this in the moment. You maybe see this guy go out there and he sucks. He might not be the best player. He doesn't have the best hands. He's not going to go score a goal. It's easy as a leader to sit back there and throw blame and be like, this guy stinks. He shouldn't even be out there. Go to your coach. Why is the guy on the ice? But what's so crucial and what all good leaders have is they don't, especially as a player, you're not the coach. You don't make the line decisions. If a guy's out there, it's your job as a leader and a captain on the team to have the utmost confidence and make them feel like they have every reason to be on the ice, because even if they are not the best player and not the most skilled or whatever it may be, if they're looking at especially as a freshman, looking at a senior captain and he's instilling confidence in them, they're going to play 10, 15, 20% better. And that 10, 15, 20 can be the difference between winning and losing a game.
Yeah, you can outwork another team. Your skill's close enough, you can outwork and overcome a skill deficiency. Mm-hmm. And I remember a couple of years ago, we made a little run in the state playoffs, my high school team, and we were the 13 seed. We upset the 4 seed in the first round, and a big pivotal moment of that game was we were up 3-2. We had an offensive zone face-off that they won, and chipped it off the glass. It was an awkward bounce, got past our number one defenseman, and his partner he was an A-level. He was a senior, just A-level player. Wasn't the greatest, but he was just a steady stay-at-home defenseman, would just kind of do his job. Had to score like 1 goal in 4 years, right? We knew what we had with him, and he was just steady. Mm-hmm. And puck gets past our best defenseman, and now it's a foot race down the ice, full length, one of their better players against this defenseman, who absolutely just puts his head down and chases his ass all the way down the ice and gets enough of him to bother him there. He doesn't get a perfectly good shot off. Goalie makes a save. We get the rebound, kick it back up ice immediately, come down the ice, score a goal, bang, make it 4-2. So instead of it being 3-3, that 3-3 tie game, it goes to a 3-3 game to a 4-2 game us because of that hustle and the effort of that defenseman who refused to give up an easy goal, refused to give up a breakaway. He could have easily dogged it going back and hoped that our goalie made the save, but he went back, got enough pressure on the shooter to make it a hard shot for him. And after he made that play, he starts coming to the bench for a change because he's gassed. And as he's coming to the bench, he's standing next to the bench just as our guy scores, and everybody on the bench immediately jumps towards him and grabs him on the bench because we all knew that he made a play, a big hustle play that made a massive difference, got the puck up to our goal scorers who scored to ice the game, and we ended up winning the game 4-2. But those are the little things that you have to make sure as a leader that all of your players, top to bottom, know that they can make a difference in the game. They may not score the winning goal, but they make a difference.
They might just give you 30 seconds of rest for your first line.
That's it.
But every single thing that any player can contribute to a roster.
Everyone needs to have importance. Yes. Everyone has to have a meaning because they're going to have their moment.
And you don't want that moment to come and they don't have the confidence to
100%. 100%. But yeah, I think this is great. I hope if you listen, this helps and gets you in a really good mindset for the season and gives you that mindset of, okay, I know what needs to be done for me to help my team, right? And yeah, that was fun. Thanks, Logue.
Thank you guys for having me on. It's been a while, but happy to be back.
Awesome. Enjoy.